First of all, thank you, Representative Franson. Thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it. Thank you for taking your time. I know you probably have a lot of things to do, and like I said, it's a true honor to have you come talk to our community, and we'll have more people jumping in here. And so basically, we just kind of have a conversation. There might be some people that will, type some questions in the chat that questions may or may not come up. So first of all, if you would be so kind as to tell us a little bit about your background. I know you're in Minnesota. You're one of the part of the state legislature up there. I'm just kind of interested, just by way of background, what sort of led you to delve into politics? What your background a little bit on that, if you don't mind?
I guess lack of critical thinking skills at the time led me into politics. So I was just so previous to being in the state legislature, I worked for corporate America, and then ended up moving due to just economics. Gas prices were rising. When I was married, my husband was commuting an hour and a half one way. I was commuting an hour and a half to the Twin Cities for work. And then we had a baby and decided that we would move to his hometown, the dad's hometown. And so I opened then a licensed childcare facility so I could stay at home with my child and serve a need in the community. And then I had another child, and at that time I was just seeing things that were going on in national politics, actually, that were affecting what I thought the children that I was taking care of and my own children. And I thought, well, I'll just become a little bit more politically active than just yelling at the TV, which led me into becoming active in some organizations. And then I was just asked to run for office. But a little side joke here is that when I was asked to run for office, the individual that was serving, very popular in the community, she was on the other side of the aisle, but they were just simply looking for a sacrificial lamb, which happens in some of these races that you look at, you're like, how can we ever get so-and-so out of office? Well, when you look up at the makeup of their district, you can see either it's like 70-30 leaning whatever party, right? And it's kind of impossible to get that person out. So as long as they have a D or an R in the name with a makeup of that district, it's going to be very tough. Well, in my case, the individual that represented the community was on the other side of the aisle. Still, it was about a 60-40 makeup. If a Republican, a good Republican, were to run and win, it should stay that way. Well, the only way a Republican could win is if the individual retired. It was not expecting her. They weren't expecting her to retire, and she did, and the rest is history. Not that I haven't had any close races. My second race was won by 1 vote. So on election night, I went to a recount, I won by 12. So weird things can happen in a predominantly, Republican or Democrat district. But that was a pretty tight race. It showed everybody in the state and in my area that indeed 1 vote does matter. Your vote does matter. So.
Yeah, and what is the term in Minnesota? I'm not familiar with the state politics. Is it 2-year, 4-year? What's the term on
Sure.
that position?
Yep. So in the House, it's 2 years, and then in the Senate, it's 4 years unless it's a redistricting year. So which it is, every 10 years, we redistrict those lines in the states and in the country. And so the Senate is actually, they were just elected in 2020. They are all up for re-election in 2022.
Yeah, I want to, I'm just keeping things general. I mean, you said you came from corporate America, and then you didn't have the traditional maybe lawyer, political science background that many people go into politics. They go into politics with an intention from early on, and so it's just kind of, you're frustrated with the way things are. What can I do? And many of us feel that way, but we're like, and your comment, I lacked critical thinking skills, which may indicate that politics is there's a lot of problems, within that. And I think most of us probably look at it, see I can see where it'd be kind of frustrating. Speaking of corporate America, and you talk about 1 vote counts, and all of us each get 1 vote, and it counts for one place. But I look at guys like, say, Mark Zuckerberg. He gets the same amount of votes as I do, but he has enormous influence that I don't have. And we see that even though one person, one vote, there's sort of unfairness, and some people think we live in more of a corporatocracy rather than a true political representative government or democracy. Or, I mean, do you see that at all? I mean, a lot, a lot of the skeptics out there say that, politicians are basically just, basically filling in a square, and the corporations are running things behind the scenes. Is there any truth to that, or does that depend on the level you're at? I mean, I guess I want to know, as a private citizen that has concerns about particular issues, how do I actually influence someone like you or someone else in politics to actually do what actually influences you? I mean, is it some guy writing a letter to you, sending you an email? I mean, what gets the job done? If we want to make a difference about whatever issue, and we're all passionate about different things, how do we actually make things happen?
It's actually a great question, because if I'm on the outside looking in, I see a bunch of fancy people, especially in Washington, D.C., that seem very removed from the people. On a state level, they too can be removed from the people. It seems like the fancier the person, the more removed that they are. My philosophy is I'm a mom. I've got 3 kids. I have a 23-year-old. I have a almost 16-year-old. He's permit driving. Rest my soul. Very impatient for him to get his driver's license. At the same time, my anxiety levels get the best of me when he's behind the wheel. And then I have a son that that just turned 14 in February. And so their future is important to me, because when I am here, the bills that I vote on will either negatively or positively affect their future. And so I look at that very carefully. Now, there's quite a few things that aren't going to touch them, and minor things, but when it comes to, well, we'll talk, just the conversation taking place on a national level on the vaccine passports, that can negatively affect the children that I'm raising. And so I look at that from just an average person saying, would I want a politician voting on that I absolutely have no say if this is put in, whether I can participate or not participate in. I also get to know the people that I work for. The closer you are to politics in your community, let's say the school board, township supervisors, city council, these are all very important as well. But in the higher that you get, the more removed I think you get from the people. So let's say Congress, right? They kind of forget who sent them. They're in Washington, D.C. It's their own little private club, in my opinion. And donations do run many of their decisions. In the state level, in my level, I have a community of 40,000 people that I work for. I don't know every 40,000 people, of course, but when I am out in the community, which is every day, people do know me. My kids sometimes get frustrated with me because we'll go to the grocery store. They're like, Mom, you don't have to talk to every person you see. But it's like a family reunion wherever you go, because people know me. They want to talk to me about their issues, and I believe in being approachable. When I go to the golf course and golf, I'm not just there to golf. I'm there to also talk to the people that I work for. But back to how to influence, I think what you're seeing on the national level is that we have corporations making decisions. If corporations don't like what a governor is doing or a congressperson is doing, they either withhold funds, or now they are literally moving activities out of that state to say, we don't exactly like the stand that you're taking, so we're going to punish you, and we're going to move the MLB to another state. That's just one example. Just those kind of things. It's very frustrating. You got the social media, which can be used for good or for bad, but when social media is censoring ideas, thoughts, conversations that goes against what I guess you could say the Bill Gates of the world, what they think, that's kind of dangerous. I know many of you are very health conscious individuals. We're talking about healthy lifestyles, things that can make us leave a more productive life without being unhealthy, diabetes, metabolic health. Eventually, some of those conversations are going to be taken offline because that goes against the narrative.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously, for most people paying attention to the news, we're seeing that, the Georgia election laws where they're trying to, uh, make it either, some people, depending on what side of the aisle, and some people like it, some people don't. But then I guess MLB pulled out, and I think Delta Airlines has been critical. And so, I mean, that's their company's prerogative. I mean, you can't say you can't do that as a company. I mean, that's up to them. Now, whether or not the people support them, I mean, again, it's the consumers that are going to say, well, I'm not going to fly Delta if you're going to do that, or I'm not going to watch the MLB, All-Star game, or whatever it is. I mean, there's a way back. But I think that one of the things that, we talked about the social media, and we see like, it's very frustrating because you'll see like data being generated saying that 7 out of 10 Americans agree with this particular thing, but then you talk to your community and it doesn't seem to reflect what's actually going on. And so sometimes the news that's being reported doesn't actually reflect what's actually happening. I think there's this sort of this, I mean, some people call it a propaganda type of thing, but I'm just, like I said, I hate to say that, there's nothing we can do. And I still think there has to have faith in the system. I'm sure that's why you're there. And so if it's like, I mean, I assume you're involved in social media. I know you're on Twitter. We follow each other, and you have to see what's going on in there, and some of that has to impact your thoughts. So if enough people say I disapprove of something, like any of these are very these are very divisive times. Whether you thoughts about masks and vaccines and this and that, and there's a large plurality of people that are very angry on either side. So I think it's one of those things where you have to sort of pay attention to that. Does it do us any good to continue to complain on social media? I know you mentioned that you alluded to the old guy yelling at the TV screen. Of course, no one is watching the old guy yelling at the TV screen, or maybe they do today. Maybe they can spy on you or something. But I mean, nowadays, if I'm yelling on social media, someone is probably listening. Perhaps, you or some other one that can make an influence. So does it do us any good to participate in social media?
I think social media, when used correctly, is a very powerful tool. But I believe that there's social media is very polarized as well, right? You put an idea out there, and you'll have those that support you, and then you'll have those that aren't even willing to engage in a conversation. Your idea is bad. Your ABC XYZ. How dare you even put that idea out there? If I put a lot of things out there, I'm considered controversial. But I also want people to start thinking. I want them to use their critical thinking skills to see what exactly is coming down the pike. Take the virus, for example. So when Minnesota shut down a year ago, everybody was terrified, even myself. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is bad. You're seeing what's happening in Wuhan, you see what's happening in Italy, and the numbers that were expected for Minnesota was like 74,000 people were going to die, if nothing. If we shut down, slowed the spread, allowed hospitals to ramp up, I think the number was like 54,000 would succumb to the virus. And you're just like, oh my gosh, we got to do a part, right? So you go home, the kids were sent home from school. So now I've got distance learning taking place in my household, and just trying to love on those families. Even I was stocked up on food because you just don't know what to expect. And then it went on. And then there's like another 2 weeks, and now everybody's got to stay home. You can't go anywhere unless you are considered essential, or you're going to the grocery store. You're not supposed to hang out with your friends. You're not supposed to do this. And I was like, okay, step back. We were just supposed to do this for 15 days. Now we're going on to another 2 weeks. Those 2 weeks became another 2 weeks to 4 weeks. And quickly I saw that in my opinion, I believe that government was trying to see just how far they could push us before we actually started wondering, well, how long is this going to go? And then it was, well, everybody's got to wear a mask. in order to protect lives. We're staying home to protect lives. Now we got to wear a mask to protect lives. Well, to me, that didn't make any sense, first off, because the studies that I had already read on the masks said that they weren't exactly effective. So how can science change now? But it did, right? So people are wearing masks because they're saving lives. And so how long is that going to go for? Well, we've been wearing masks here in Minnesota since July. Hasn't really done much, but government is continually pushing us. Back when the masks were announced, I told people this is just a placeholder for the vaccine. Now we have a vaccine, and what's the latest conversation that's taking place? Vaccine passports. So this is just another step. Now you're watching the news say, oh, a virus is ticking up, we got more cases, we got this. Well, every time the media starts picking up, it's because they are helping the national narrative. Before, when the cases were picking up, it was so that they could implement the stay-at-home orders. Then it was the mask mandates. Then it was more business closures, another a wave of shutdown. Minnesota shut down again in November, I believe it was, just before Thanksgiving, just before those businesses, the restaurants, the hotels, the hospitality industry was planning for holiday parties. Government shut them down. But we were all warned through the media that this probably was going to take place. The same thing is happening now with these vaccine passports. So as more people are getting vaccinated, more cases are taking place, and pretty soon the government is going to stay, whether it be on a state level or a national level, the government's going to say, oh, well, you know, in order to keep everybody, please download this passport, and if you want to participate in society, here's where you can go. And if you don't want to participate with the vaccine passports, well, there's curbside checkout for you.
Yeah, I see that coming. I find that very, very distressing. As a physician, you know, I very much am vehemently in favor of patient choice, and this is something that even if the risk benefit is high, you know, the risk benefit ratio is favorable, you still give people the choice for that, you know, and we don't know. I mean, you know, like I said, if there will be an issue with a small percentage of people will have a problem with a vaccine, that those people still have the right to make their own informed decision. And I think that's extremely scary. You know, Minnesota was one of the states that, you know, was pretty restrictive. You know, I'm in California, very similar. You know, there's other states that tend to be a little less open, and, you know, the results are not really any different. We're not seeing any real, you know, overall benefits on a population level. I don't think. I mean, people argue about that, but is there discussion with your colleagues within, because I know you said you actually were sat on a committee that was involved in, you know, health and stuff like that, and there's no discussion, and you know, you kind of shared the frustration that I have, that there's been really no discussion about improving host characteristics. You know, we have a virus, and then a vector, and we have a host, and we have a population. Study after study has shown that obesity, type 2 diabetes, other factors greatly impact not only individual health, but I'm not sure if you're aware of this, there's actually studies that show that people that are suffering from those conditions are more likely to spread the virus, you know, and we don't do anything with that. And so I'm just wondering, is there pushback against this vaccine passport within what's the likelihood of it happening here in the United States? We're seeing, you know, like Israel, and some mention of it in the UK and other countries, you know, they're looking at it, they're modeling. I know people have looked at it, they're looking at the feasibility. Do you think that's reasonable, it's going to happen, and what can we do to prevent that if we're not in favor of it?
So what I think is going to happen, so last week, Press Secretary Psaki made mention of the fact that the Biden administration isn't exactly looking at a passport, but that businesses may be. So just like the mask mandate wasn't done on a national level, President Trump didn't believe that. It happened on a corporation level. And big business, we'll go to the Menards and the Fleet Farm here in Minnesota, two very big stores. So Menards instituted a mask mandate. Well, for those that did not believe in a mask mandate, they shopped at Fleet Farm. and Target instituted a mask mandate. Walmart did not, or if they did, they were very lax about it. So people shopped at Walmart. Then the state said, not enough people, not enough businesses are participating in the masking issue, so we're going to mandate it. And then they will find small businesses who are not following the mask mandate. But guess who they're not fining? They're not fining the big corporations because they've got fancy lobbyists or they've got fancy PACs that donate to candidates. So they're not going to go after those donors that may be the governor, right? So they go after the small business who has already been shut down. They're terrified of being shut down. So it's an abusive relationship. Government says, if you don't do this, we are going to do that. And in order to keep their business, their lights on, their employees working, then they follow down and they beg the people who are doing commerce with them, please wear your mask so that we can stay open, placing blame on the consumer who walks in who may choose not to wear a mask. I don't like wearing masks, I'll tell you, I don't like it. But I obviously shop at a lot of small businesses. So out of respect for them, I 90% of the time will wear a mask, not all the time. But when I shop at Target, I'm not wearing a mask. They're not going to get in trouble. And I'm not speaking to anybody longer than 15 minutes at Target anyway. But when I go to my local meat market, I may wear a mask when I walk in there, if that makes sense. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I see the same thing going with the passport, the vaccine passport. There's going to be big businesses that say, I love this idea. Absolutely. If you want to participate here at Target, then you need to show us that you have been vaccinated. If you don't want to, then, well, we have curbside, so we're not discriminating against you. Just order online and pick it up. For the small businesses, they're not going to do that. They're not going to impose that on their consumers because they want people to come into the doors. But if not enough people participate in that, I do see states coming down and saying, here's laws for you. Now, Governor DeSantis in Florida, right away, he came out with that executive order strong and said, absolutely not. We are not going to participate in this. It's discriminatory and we believe in choice. I think that's the best way to go. I believe in choice too. As a lawmaker, I cannot tell anybody that I work for to get a vaccine. That is their decision. I do not know how their body is going to react. And it's not my place to make that decision for them and their family.
Yeah, I agree. And again, as a physician, I agree. I mean, even if I disagree with their decision, I still support the right to make that decision. You know, it's like if they're, I've had patients that declined a surgery that was clearly in their best interest, but they decided not to for whatever reason. And that's their issue. You know, one of the questions is about the legality. You know, we talk about, is this actually a law or is this an executive order? And how does a consumer, like, you know, some people say it's not a law. I'm not breaking the law because it's not on the books. The legislation hasn't done the legislative process. I mean, there's a a three system checks and balances, and the legislators make the law. The executive branch, has its thing, and the judicial branch has its thing. And, when we see these executive orders that are being put out by governors, how does the average consumer what kind of protections do we have if we say this is not a law? How are you, how do I deal with that? I mean, I've seen people that don't know, we see raids being done by the police on people and they shut down. And then the other one saying, look, you don't have a warrant, get off my property. I mean, where do we stand as citizens so we don't, unduly harm ourselves and still defend our rights?
I think it takes place with the individual if they're willing to stand up to those tactics. Many people they just don't like confrontation. They're just like, go along, get along. All right, you asked me to do this. I don't want to cause a scene. And so we get away with it. So in the Minnesota House, for example, We are not allowed on the House floor as a lawmaker unless we are wearing a mask. And I did actually test that out when it first became like the guided suggestion back in, I don't know when it was, July, August. No, it was October. I think it was in October. And I started off with a mask. That's what I was told to do. I think I may have started. Anyway, I can't remember how it was, but anyway, I had taken it off. And I have anxiety. I don't like talking with a mask on. And it's only because I don't like being forced to do it. When somebody tells me to do something that I'm not comfortable with, it bothers me and it raises my anxiety levels. So on this particular day, I was asked to wear a mask and if I wanted to talk on the House floor. So I did. I ended up taking it off and I was chastised. I was going into my speech and then I was chastised and there was an verbal altercation between me and the majority House leader, who's a Democrat, telling me to put my mask on if I wanted to continue to speak. I told the gentleman, I said, you know what, pretend I'm at a restaurant because science says I can have up to 6 people at my table. So pretend I'm at a restaurant. I said, there's nobody around me. I should be able to speak. And so I continued to speak. And in order for me to continue, I was cut off again. I had to put a mask on and continue my speech. It was a bully tactic. It was humiliating. It was the speech is online somewhere, I'm sure, but it was absolutely, it was humiliating for this guy to tell me to mask up when there was especially nobody around me. It was all for control. And then when session started in January, they instituted in the House rules, if you wanted to do your job on the House floor, you have to wear a mask. And unfortunately, I have not been on the House floor since that mandate went into effect, which saddens me because I believe that we do our best work when we are in the chamber, not communicating through the computer screen. But after that humiliating takedown, I have no desire to walk in and act like I had been, I'm being forced to do something against something that I don't believe in.
Do you see, do you see a change? I mean, it seems like there's a level of fed upness within the population. I think it's palpable. I think there's many people that have just said this, particularly when it comes to this vaccine passport, it's like, this is a bridge too far.
Yeah.
This is the hill we're willing to die on. And there's some people who say that, they're going to continue to push, or whoever they are, and what the reasons may be, it's hard to say. I do see the hypocrisy in some of the science where you can, you go to a restaurant, you're supposed to stand up wearing a mask, and then 4 feet away, you're sitting down not wearing a mask, and somehow the virus doesn't spread when you're sitting down eating, and it does when you're standing, which to me is just, it's just almost comical. I mean, it's like a bad Monty Python skit sometimes. But do you see, is this still a deeply divisive, politically drawn lines, or is there some sort of, enough people that are like on both sides that are saying this, enough is enough. We're gonna, most of us, at least under the impression that America was one of the places where you had pretty decent amount of civil liberties, freedoms. You compare it to like China or some other places who are known for, pretty aggressive human rights abuses. But, is there enough people within the political atmosphere that are saying this has just gone too far and we're not going to stand up with this, or are they going along with this?
No, I absolutely believe that the American people truly believe in freedom, but they have to realize that freedom is not a carrot that you wave. And if you behave a certain way or fall in line a certain way, that you will get a piece of freedom. That's not what America is all about. The vaccine passport, some people are like, yes, get your vaccine and you will get your freedoms back. That's what's being driven by the media. If you want to go to concerts again, you want to go to ball games, you want to go to the state fair, get vaccinated. That is not, in my opinion, freedom. That is coercion, and coercion is not consent. Freedom is not, like I said, a carrot that you just wave around. but that is what is being used for now. So the vaccine passport will be another carrot. Like all you have to do is put your information here. If you want to go to that ball game, you just show them that everything is up to date. Well, that's coercion. And I don't honestly, I don't believe that's what the founding fathers had for us. And if they can force you to put a mask on, they can, and if they force a vaccine passport on you, it doesn't just end with the COVID vaccine. You are then being literally owned by big pharma. You're being owned by corporations, and your body then belongs to big tech. We are human beings, sovereign people, and that will be every decision that we will be able to make will be governed by those three things: big tech, big corporations, and big pharma.
Yeah, I mean, some people mention, when it comes to, mandatory vaccinations or effectively mandatory, if you want to participate in society, like I said, some people, if they want to be employed in a certain field, if they want to go to school, if they want to have access to, maybe stores or concerts or traveling either domestically or abroad, that basically almost makes it mandatory. And there's some people that will point to things like the Nuremberg statutes that saying, you can't force people to have medical procedures without their consent. Is that going to hold up? I mean, is it, do you think we have recourse if somebody says, look, you cannot work at this job unless you get a vaccine, or something? Do you think there's going to be, is that a tenable defense for that?
I don't know. There is a Supreme Court case that took place, I think, in 1918, and that ruled basically that that government can tell you that you need to have a vaccine. I can't remember what that specific case is. Somebody would have to look that up. But I do believe it'll be challenged. But I'm not an attorney. I don't know. But I do believe that people need to use their voices. And where is that line in the sand? Because if society allows freedom to move, to be governed by a vaccine passport, where does it end? Because like I said, it's not going to end with the COVID-19 vaccine. There are other mutations that are happening because a virus does its thing and mutates. And every year or every 6 months, however they feel like you need your boosters, you are going to be tethered to that passport. And along with that, then comes the social credit scores. And everything will be digitally tied in, and your freedom will be restricted to what you are up to date to or what government deems is appropriate. But back to that committee that you had mentioned that I belong to or sit on is preventative health, which I was like super excited to be a part of that committee this year. It's a brand new committee. I CrossFit. Well, I like to say I CrossFit. I haven't been exactly stellar in attending these days, but I got into CrossFit a few years ago when I started packing on the pounds. I have hypothyroidism, and everywhere I went, it was like, well, this just happens. Your metabolism isn't all that great, and that's part of being hypothyroid. You're just gonna have to live with the weight gain. Not a big fan of packing on the pounds because it was starting to affect me mentally. I was starting to not exactly fit into my clothing anymore. And it was really hard for me to even look at my photos because my face was so freaking bloated. And I'd have to find just that perfect pose so I could hide some of the chubbiness that was happening. Anyway, so one day I was chatting with a colleague and said, well, let's find a place to work out when session starts. So I was thinking more like Pilates, and he found a CrossFit gym. I used to lift weights in high school and college, and I thought, well, I can just pick up where I left off. And I'm kidding you not, like I loaded that bar up like I was going to be able to do a hang clean, no problem. Yeah, I was barely able to move the bars. It was kind of humiliating. And for about a month, I could barely even walk. but I loved it. Nobody told me though that when you work out, you probably should still pay attention to what you put into your body, because I'd work out and then I just eat because I had worked out. So I'm like, I can afford all these calories. I just worked out, and I was still not seeing any progress until I actually started following some people on the Twitter on physical fitness, and incorporated intermittent fasting, changing my diet to be more low carb, and which then that's when I, coupled with working out, started definitely seeing some positive changes, and along with that became the mental attitude as well went along with that. So when lockdowns happened, gyms were closed. So of course, I'm kind of lazy without the community being able to work out with. So I did some at-home workouts, but not enough. But the research was showing during that time, even in the beginning times of the COVID, that metabolic health was very important, along with vitamin D, in preventing some of the COVID complications. So being on the preventative health, I thought kind of we would dig into the background issues of the complications, and that was not the case. We talked about mandating sex education, which is beyond what normal sex education would be. And then, or it's called comprehensive sex education. So we focused on that. We focused on the COVID-19 vaccination. Nothing about how can we encourage or change statutes to allow or to focus on a healthier lifestyle. We did a bill on banning menthol cigarettes, and that was about it. I don't really think there was anything too life-changing happening there. I did introduce a bill that would mandate vitamin D coverage for those that wanted to check their vitamin D levels. I think vitamin D is very important. I've had low vitamin D levels in the past, and even when I went into my physical last July, I asked to have my vitamin D levels checked again, and because they always fluctuate, and I had a hard time, even the doctor even doing a blood test for that. She's like, well, you checked your blood levels last year and they were okay. I said, well, I still want to see where they are now. Yeah, but you just had it done last year. Like, no, you don't understand. I really want to see where my levels were. And they were like at 83. But when I finally got that test, but it was still a struggle for me just to see my vitamin D, because my care provider did not think that it was very important. So I was very disappointed on that. And then I started digging also into the COVID-19 deaths, and which is I'm not going to tell you everything that I found there. You can Google Dr. Scott Jensen and myself. We were on Fox News discussing some of the abnormalities that we had found in COVID-19 death classifications. But just this year alone, though, the first 25 deaths, I'm seeing kidney disease, lupus, severe COPD, renal disease, cirrhosis, coronary artery disease, hypertension, type 2 diabetes, hypertension, chronic kidney disease. We're not healthy people. We are not seeing, like, the majority of people who are dying, and people are going to die, right? There's no way to prevent death. There's only two things in life that are guaranteed: taxes and death. But we are not a healthy society. And we are not discussing as policymakers how to live healthier lifestyles. And nor do we want to mandate people get healthy, but we need to have those conversations without people feeling like they're being shamed. So I posted there was a local paper in my area that posted a COVID-19 cases are on the rise. So I make a post and I say, yes, they are on the rise, but it's also important to remember that metabolic health is very important in beating the COVID-19 drastic situations. And, there's a lot of people and I posted the CDC study that said 78% of people with COVID-19 complications are those that are obese or they're overweight. So metabolic health is 78% that's leading the complications. So I make this post. One lady, not just one, which I'm surprised it wasn't more, but I have most of my haters blocked, but made the comment that I was fat shaming and that I have supporters who are overweight and that I am not being a nice person. I'm not being a Christian for pointing these things out, and I'm just not a nice person, and that she was going to pray for those that I had disparaged. I'm just talking truth. It was a CDC study. And if we can't have these honest conversations and we want to continually dancing around the elephant in the room, we are never, ever going to beat COVID-19, ever. For some reason, it likes to attack the people that have metabolic health issues. But guess who's being punished? People who are trying to lead a healthier lifestyle are the ones that are being punished. We are being told to mask up, save lives, stay home, save lives. But we're not saying, you know what? Go get some physical activity in to save your life. Eat a healthier lifestyle. Don't eat the processed crap. I just had family dinner over on Sunday. I had all three of my kids for over on Saturday for dinner. My daughter came up. We had our little Easter dinner on Saturday. And even my brownies, which, whatever. My daughter was like, thought she was making them from a box. And I'm like, well, you can, we're making them from scratch because all the chemicals that are in the box, I at least want to know what I am putting into the brownie mix. By the way, they weren't very good. They were pretty gross. But anyway, but everything that I try to do for my own kids is real food and not the processed crap, because I don't want them to get sick and end up with some sort of metabolic issues later down the road. And setting a healthier lifestyle when they're kids, they are more apt to take that with them when they're out of the house.
Yeah, I mean, I echo your frustration with the metabolic health issue. One of the things that we've seen, with this pandemic response is the government corporations have been wildly successful at getting the message out. I mean, I literally cannot even go to any store in the entire country and not see a wear a mask, social distance. It's in the news 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The messaging is there. In the 1960s, the Surgeon General came out and said, look, smoking is bad for us. By the 1970s, we started to put some teeth in legislation. We reduced our smoking rates from 45% down to 15% what they are. We've had a 66% reduction in smoking due to government and corporate efforts. We could do the same thing with obesity and metabolic disease, if we had the will to do that. I mean, it's clearly doable. And I think that the things you pointed out, processed food, I think every diet proponent, all of us, no matter what camp you're in, whether you're on a meat-based camp or a vegan camp or a Mediterranean diet camp, and the literature supports this too. The ultra-processed foods, the junk food that we all know that's out there, is causing problems. And the other thing you pointed out was, get outside and walk outside. During the pandemic, I think the average American's gained, 28 pounds or something like that, some ridiculous number.
Pound and a half, I believe, a month.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous. And then, you've got like people like Krispy Kreme, here's your free donut every day for a year. Just get a vaccine. Why is it so hard to get that message out there? It doesn't take any more money to say, if you want, you wear a mask, social distance. Oh, and by the way, stop eating processed food and exercise. Why can't we add that message onto there for those people that say, why can't we do both? We're not talking about it. I've not heard Anthony Fauci every day talking about doing interviews about metabolic health or the CDC or anybody. And is there nobody that understands this? Am I the only one? Are you and I the only people on the planet that understand this? Do you have any colleagues that support what you're talking about? And if so, why aren't we hearing about it?
I'm sure I have colleagues that do support that, But I mean, once again, it's that elephant in the room. One of my colleagues, Representative Pat Garofalo, I think he deleted his tweets, but was very blunt in his Twitter feed on obesity and COVID-19. And he actually, I think he made a tweet something about that the obese people should not be getting their vaccines first because whatever reason, I can't remember what his tweet was, which I did private message him and said, actually it's these individuals that probably should be getting the COVID-19 first, because healthy people who take care of themselves, their immune system is working. But it's that elephant in the room. People don't want to be like accused of fat shaming. And I don't think it's fat shaming. I love the people that I work for. I try to lead by example with working out. I try to use my social media, my Instagram. My Instagram is mainly devoted to food or my working out photos, to just to encourage people to get out and move and take care of their health, because health is wealth. At the end of the day, if you are not healthy, you have nothing. You're going to be spending your time here on earth being sick, miserable, and paying for doctor bills. I don't like paying for doctor bills at all. But for some reason, you're right, Anthony Fauci and public health officials are not discussing the elephant in the room. And we as a country really need to take our health back from big pharma. They're the ones that are big pharma and China are profiting off of this COVID.
Yeah, I mean, I see when I look at federal lobbying dollars, pharmaceutical industries, I think gave $350 million in federal lobbying. They're by far the biggest industry that does that. So clearly there's an agenda with that. And I think a lot of the politics is influenced by that. I'd be naive not to think that. For me, it's frustrating because, in the United States, we are still one of the most powerful, wealthiest, we have resource-rich countries in the world, and yet we have a population that's been decimated by chronic disease. We should be a nation of strong, healthy, clear-thinking people. And I think, quite honestly, I think the poor nutrition and the metabolic health is affecting some of the critical thinking skills that people have. Unfortunately, I think these rampant rates of depression and anxiety that's even affecting our children right now is a product of this. And I can't believe people aren't getting frustrated. Even if you are, in the pocket of pharmaceutical industries, you've got to have compassion for your own children. I mean, my gosh, where are these people at? And I don't know. I mean, as far as, how to impact that as a citizen, I say, don't buy the stuff. Just don't support these companies that are, feeding you basically what amounts to junk. But is there the other thing I wanted to mention, this is something that doesn't get discussed. We talk about, because I'm obviously a person that's promoting ranching and eating meat and low carb stuff. And I see that being under attack constantly. I don't know what the situation is in Minnesota, but I see different places that are trying to pass legislation to making raising food very difficult. And then we get this corporatized global control of food, which is basically processed food, being foisted upon the society to further make us worth. But the healthcare industry, contributes about 10% of our greenhouse gases. I don't know if most people know that. I mean, the studies show that healthcare is a huge component of the environmental issues, if you will. Whereas if we look at, cattle in the United States, it's 2%. So do you find, I mean, I know it's a different topic. We've been talking about COVID and the vaccine passports, but is that something that is on your radar, is on anybody's radar? How do we, again, I think when we talk about in general health, we have to talk about food. And, when our food is being controlled by corporations just to make ultra processed food, it's a problem.
Well, that leads me into a whole new other topic, which is the World Economic Forum, the WEF. One of their goals by 2030, first, their number one goal is, or one of them, one of 10, is you will own nothing and you will be happy. Another one of their goals is you will be eating meat very rarely. It's going to be considered a treat. A treat. If you want to eat meat, it's going to be a treat. Now, I love to eat prime rib. I would eat prime rib 7 days out of the week if I could. Um, but that's Bill Gates is the primary owner of farmland here in America. Why?
Yeah, and he's publicly decided that he thinks every Western country should go on 100% synthetic meat. So, I mean, obviously that's a problem. I mean,
Big
obviously,
problem.
and I think, the problem is I think the will of the people is not being represented. I don't think the vast majority of Americans are ready to embrace synthetic meat and to completely do away with that. I don't think that's even on anybody's wish list, except for a few animal activists and stuff like that. But I mean, so, I mean, I hear people talking about just mass civil disobedience, and it doesn't have to be violence. We saw, there's different ways of doing that. I mean, is there, I mean, I guess I'm wondering, this sort of some of the Constitution protections we have, freedom to assemble, freedom of speech, those things seem to maybe been tossed out the window a little bit. I mean, what's the thought on that?
Well, the COVID-19 shutdowns, when people were not able to assemble, it's hidden under the guise of public health. Like, yeah, we're shutting down the churches. You guys should not be gathering for Thanksgiving dinners, Christmas dinners, because you could get your grandma sick. I mean, they set up tattletale hotlines in many states, including Minnesota, so that you could rat on your friends and neighbors if they were doing something outside of what public health said was safe to do. Um, this virus and the shutdowns showed the government just how willing people were to give up their rights for a little bit of security and safety. So it's going to be really interesting to see just if the tide will turn, um, the more that these vaccine passports are discussed. As far as the synthetic food, it's going to come right down to propaganda, right? So when it's time, there will be a flip of the switch, and you're going to see marketing campaigns saying that the synthetic food is better for the environment. We're going to reduce greenhouse gases. If you want to save Mother Nature, then switch to something that is a little better on reducing the greenhouse gases. Right now in Minnesota, we have not had those conversations yet, but we are moving toward carbon-free goals, moving more toward solar panels and things of that nature. Electric cars, we're going to bring the electric car mandates to Minnesota, which is a whole nother topic on the reliance of China using slave labor, the Uyghurs in China, children in Congo digging for cobalt. Those are human rights issues as well. But for some reason, those conversations never take place here in America, where we're talking about equality and equity and trying to heal from our past history of America. But we're willing to rely on foreign labor who are being used against their will in order to achieve a utopia of a carbon-free energy.
Yes, and I don't know. I mean, we just went to an election. I think everybody's got political fatigue right now. But I mean, in all honesty, I mean, races are already being generated up for I guess, what is it, the 2022 stuff for the midterm elections. Are you getting a sense, and I don't know what the election cycle is in Minnesota, but at least on a national level, are you getting a sense that there's going to be a backlash from what's going on with the rapid pace of what we're seeing is, taking away freedoms and rights for some people? Now, some people agree with it. Some people are perfectly fine with it. And again, that's a prerogative. But I mean, I find that, the ironic thing is, when you fight for freedoms, you fight for the freedoms of, basically cowards as well. I mean, it's kind of like the people that aren't
Sure,
willing to
they
stand
don't
up for
see
their own
it.
freedom. They don't see it, but they're being protected from something down the line. Other people will draw everybody has a place, their tipping point. And if you say, well, it's silly, just put on the mask, just take the vaccine, there's going to be something else, own nothing. Well, what happens when they have you exchange your goods for the little pot or, whatever. I mean, I know it seems kind of, maybe it's a little bit hyperbolic, but there is a
Oh, it's
point where
not.
everybody has a pushing point. Maybe, hopefully not. Do you see, I mean, can you see like maybe with the, I don't know if you have your own internal polling or sense of what's going on within your community. You mentioned you got through a very close election, this time, and it's a very split district, favoring
Oh,
perhaps.
2012. That was 2012. I just won with 68%. I think it was
Okay.
68% the last election.
Okay. So you've been around, you've been in there for a while. So, but I mean, do you find that, are we going to see a sort of a massive backlash in the next election? Is there any evidence that that's going on, or do you think people are going along with this and everybody's happy? And it's
No,
like the media portrays it, everybody wants a vaccine and everybody's happy to wear a mask. I mean, clearly that's not the case, but that seems to be what the media is suggesting.
no, there was a major backlash in 2010 after 4 years of, or 2 years of Obama when he pushed through the Obamacare. There was a major backlash nationwide that led to the Tea Party and a lot of people getting elected that way. I think that there'll be a backlash, if not really so much, I don't think, from um, on the local governors or such, but just the massive push on a federal level that is being done. There's not much room for compromise. One party can get its way anytime they want, and they are willing to go as far as they possibly can during these first 2 years. And then I believe that there will definitely be, if there already isn't a backlash. I know that there's a lot of people that are regretting how they voted. Politicians will say one thing when they are running for office, as we saw with now President Biden saying he wasn't going to do this. And now that he's in office, some of those things are actually happening that he said he was against. And that's why it's very important to pay attention. It's very important to reach out to your congressman. It's very important to reach out to your local lawmakers. But it's not just a state and federal levels you have to look at as well. For those of you that are wondering, how can you affect change? The school boards are very important. City councils, for a lot of the things that do not get done on a state level, they start off at the city council level. And the more cities in a state that participate in something, for example, we'll just talk on the smoking ban. Smoking ban did not start off at a state level. That started off with cities implementing a ban. And before you knew it, there was enough cities taking place that the state stepped in and passed their own legislation. So there wasn't these piecemeal type deals. And that's very important. The city councils are very important. It's not just talking about taxes, but you can actually affect state policy on a city council as well.
Do you think a city council could ban a vaccine passport? Is that something that, I mean, is that something that's being discussed either on a local, state level in Minnesota, they're saying, hey, in my district, we're going to ban vaccine passports. I mean, is that something that could happen?
Well, I think with cities that were passing mask mandates, nothing would prevent them then from passing or banning a vaccine passport as well. Mhm.
Maybe that's a good idea. I don't know how hard it is to get this stuff done. I mean, how long does it take to affect legislature? Can you get stuff done pretty quickly if you need to, or is it sometimes it seems like some things never get done, or it's a lip service is given.
Yeah, some things can get done like this. It just moves through, not a problem. Some issues, for example, one of the issues I worked on many years ago, 2014, helped pass industrialized hemp, which the individual Representative Khan had been working on, I think, for like 20 years at the time. And I only worked on it for 2 years with her. But on a national level, that had already been industrial hemp, the study had already been done on a federal level. So states were then passing their own industrialized hemp legislation. So in Minnesota, we got it done in 2014, but that was 20 some years. There's a lot of bills that, every year they get introduced and they just don't go anywhere. And then one year it's just because it's taking place, that conversation starting to take place in other states or on a national level that the state decides to move.
Awesome. Well, I've taken an hour of your time. I want to be mindful of that. I want to appreciate, appreciate having you here. Where can people go to find more about you if they want to support, your campaign, I guess, when it comes up? And I'm not sure what year you're running, maybe 2022 or something like that, but
2022.
2022. And so I know you're on Twitter. So what are your social media tags, and where do people find out more about what you're doing?
Yep. So Rep Mary Franson is the Twitter handle. And then I have my campaigns is Mary at team or Mary, what is it? I never Google myself because I'm afraid to, but teamfranson.com is the website. It hasn't been updated lately. And then I'm on Facebook. My official page is just Representative Mary Franson. I'm pretty active on the Facebook page. Twitter is, there's not too many people in my district that are on Twitter, just a bunch of haters that come after me. So
Well, we've all got those anyway. Well, thank you so much for being generous with your time, and I wish you luck. And hopefully, there's more people that sort of see it the way you see it. I think the views that I have, and I think many people in this community are shared by you. And I think that's great to see that we at least have some people in there fighting for us. And as long as we can support you, and hopefully we can do things ourselves to affect change in the way, or prevent change that we don't want to see. So anyway, thanks again for coming on.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Okay, guys, we'll see everybody tomorrow. Take care now. Okay, have a great day, guys. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye.